Hi, I'm Lavinia Butler, and welcome to Luvic and Company. Today, our guest is Metro Nashville-Davidson County Sheriff Darren Hall. Welcome, Darren, to Luvic and Company.
Thank you, Lavinia, for having me.
We're glad to be here. Matter of fact, you were here 8 years ago.
Right.
When you first ran for sheriff. And this was where it all began, on Luvic and Company.
That's exactly right. I was driving over here thinking about that today. I really enjoyed that back then, and a little more black hair in my hair at the time. But
oh yeah, well I guess we're not gonna say stress.
Right. It's turned on me.
That's all right. Now that you're in the third term, every 4 years. Now this is your fourth year,
right.
A third term, and so, my gosh, what are some of the successes? I will let you brag on that.
Well, I appreciate that. You know, I grew up down there, as I like to say. I worked there for many years before running for sheriff, and it's a line of work that I've chosen. I really enjoy the world of the criminal justice system, and so, but we've had a lot of really good things going on. The people down there, long before I was there, and I think long after I'm gone, do really good work. And I like to tell people that we're measured by failure. Usually people see us and read about us when we mess up, and so I have people tell me all the time, I don't hear a lot about you, you must be doing pretty well, and the agency's doing pretty well. But we really have had some really good things going on. When I went to work in the sheriff's office in the mid-'80s, we were overcrowded. We had jails that the federal court system said were unconstitutional. They weren't being managed well. We had a lot of problems going on. As you well know, the sheriff's office was in the court system all the time, and we now have institutions that are the only system in the United States that's fully accredited. Every institution we have vacancies, we have jail space for people, and that's important because people are being housed the right way and being treated the right way while they're in jail and awaiting court or awaiting transfer to the prison system. And a lot of cities don't take, I think, pride in managing that situation very well. And I think we do a really good job here in Nashville.
Are we very overcrowded here?
No, you really have some 500 to 600 empty beds, which is a unique situation for a city to have. And you know, I say this all the time, we're not anxious to fill them up because we hope our city won't have that need.
Right.
But it's good to have a city that's not pressured by making a decision of who to let out because of an overcrowded situation. So we're in a really good place. And men and women, you know, when I went to work there, they were all housed in one building. We now have a freestanding female institution that is really focused just on the women's needs.
Is that a new building, a new facility?
It is. It was built about 6 years ago, I guess opened up about 5 years ago. And it's an accredited institution. It's specific for female populations. That's usually not the case. Most of the time, women are housed wherever the men had space, and that's not the right way to do it. And so we're very proud of the way the facility side of the sheriff's office is managed. But probably the thing that I'm most proud of, if I look back on my, say, 8 years or so, is that we've been within budget every year. Now that sounds boring, it's complicated,
but this day and time, no, dealing with money and budget, that's not boring.
It really is a complicated situation. I mean, we really don't control who's brought to the jail system or what crimes and laws are changing all the time. And it's very difficult to get your hands around the expenses of an organization like that. And we have some $60 million budget. It's a very large part of the government, and very proud of the work that we do trying to manage that. We do it in all sorts of ways, but the one that I think is most important is that we have the lowest turnover rate in the country. We have the lowest number of people leaving us once they come to work there. And I think that's important because that's where a lot of agencies spend money, is hiring and firing and transferring and moving people all the time. And we take great pride in recruiting really well into the line of work that we're in. But once we get you there, we believe in taking care of you if you're going to do the right thing. And if you're not going to do the right thing, we want you to find another place to work. We don't believe in allowing the typical government sometimes gets a reputation of not dealing with its problems. We've found that dealing with a person who doesn't come to work on time on a regular basis, if you're going to deal with that situation, people around that situation start to behave and perform and respect the fact that they're going to be held accountable. So our turnover is very low, and what that means is that our budget as it relates to salaries is also within its budget because of the way we control that number. So very proud of that. I tell people all over the country that we have a very low turnover rate. They always want to know. We write articles. We're trying to help other jurisdictions do some of the things that we're doing, and very proud of that.
Well, what are some of the other things that you do? That the sheriff, you know, because everybody said, okay, you have the Metro Police and you have the sheriff. So what's the difference between you housing the inmates and they bringing them in?
You're right.
But there are other things that the sheriff's office does.
Yeah, I get that question more than any, and I always tell people, well, it starts with our name. It's a police department because the police chief is appointed by the mayor, and the sheriff's office, the office makes it an elected function. And so, as you mentioned, we run every 4 years. The police chief is an appointed position by whoever the mayor may decide. And that makes us different. They're a department. They go to mayor meetings, and other department heads in the government are working with the police department, fire departments, and these other water and sewer and so forth. Because we're elected, we work with all of those entities, but we really don't work for the mayor, for example, whoever the mayor may be. And this is my third, I guess, I've worked with. And it really has nothing to do with how we function. Obviously, we work with them, but we do not work for. We don't report to them. We really report to the city council. That's how our budget and so forth is decided.
And all of us citizens.
And the citizens, right.
We elect you.
You pick it every 4 years. But that's an important place and way that the sheriff's office, police department are different in the way that we come to be in these jobs. But other than that, we share a lot of responsibilities. When a person is arrested in the streets of Nashville, they're brought to us. We try to make that a very seamless transition. Just a person's handed off, the paperwork and so forth comes with it. But then we take responsibility for the person from there all the way through the adjudication of the case in a courtroom and eventually to a prison system or maybe to release into the streets. And so a lot of our budget is spent around housing everyone. Some 60,000 people a year get arrested in Nashville and brought to us.
Wow.
So the police are out doing the majority of the criminal arrest in the county. We do some support services for a lot of that. For example, we serve criminal warrants on people who are in jails and prisons around the county. We're also out at the hospitals around the county. Anytime a person is arrested and is in the hospital awaiting being booked, we go to the hospital for the police and serve and work, serve the warrants and so forth, and actually provide security for that function. And then we have lots of pieces of the sheriff's office. The thing that people probably don't know much about is we serve the civil law enforcement functions for the city, which means all the divorces, garnishments, orders of protection, evictions, a lot of things like that. We do all of that, some 200,000 a year.
What, in the form of subpoenas?
Right. The courts would order us to go out and place you on notice that you're being evicted, and then we'll go back and make sure that you're on, if your courts are satisfied with what you're doing. If they're not, then we're actually the entity that's required to ensure that you are evicted out of locations. Orders of protection, if you've taken an order of protection for me to stay away from you, we serve me, we go out and notify me and serve notice to me to stay away from you until the courts have remedied our situation. Divorces are the same way. You file for divorce, then I'm put on notice by the sheriff's office. We go out and serve the person and tell them of the situation. We had an officer shot and killed in 1995 serving an eviction notice. We're out knocking on doors, serving warrants. It's a very volatile part of a county. A lot of officers around the country are injured during that very difficult time because the person at the home is usually domestic related for sure. Very volatile, and we're there, and it's a dangerous line of work, dangerous part of what we do, and we do some 200,000 a year of those all over the city of Nashville. So you take the jails and housing and the custody of everyone, and then you take the civil law enforcement for the county, and those are the two primary functions that we serve for the county. We have some 900 employees, which makes us the largest elected office.
That's what I was going to ask, how many you had.
It's a very, very large. Yes. It's a very large part of the county and county government.
My gosh, I'm like, where out here? They're all over this whole county. And
yeah, you'll see us scattered doing a lot of different functions, and I have a lot of people ask, and we, you know, it's about $60 to $70 million budget a year, depending on. We have a contract that increases that budget, but we take great pride in managing employees well, and we think managing the budget well, which in turn is what I think we're there to do. Okay.
Well, now, Darren, I want to talk about this a little controversial kind of issue.
Right.
I have to kick this in too.
Good.
Because, you know, I've been wondering about it. The only time the negative part about hear your name in the news is surrounding 287G, and the ICE program. And I usually hear the media's part of it, and then they'll mention Sheriff Darren Hall and all, but I never hear your side of it.
Right.
Now, I'm going to give you a forum today to say your side of that whole issue.
Well, good. Well, thank you. Yeah, you know, the interesting part of that whole story is that the media used to beat up on us for doing nothing about it. Okay?
Right.
And then once you do something about it, as in the legal means, which is a 287G program, what it really amounts to, Lavinia, as I said, I've worked there for 22, 23 years in the sheriff's office, and all along, forever, when a person is arrested in Nashville, we would send your fingerprints and your information.
Oh, excuse me. First, we should probably tell everybody what 287G is.
Yeah, and I can explain it through this, really,
Okay,
because
good.
what it really did was take the place of what had always been happening. When a person's arrested, all along, long before Darren came around, your fingerprints and your information were sent to the federal government. Back then it was called INS. And INS would take your fingerprints, your photographs, if you were arrested today, and check your immigration status. And then they would notify us, the federal government would notify us what to do next. I was in the booking room in the jails in the mid-'80s, and we used to arrest someone, and if they were born outside the country, then we would notify Memphis, Tennessee, which is where the office was, that someone had been arrested, then for them to check and tell us what to do next. Memphis, Tennessee would send an agent by. The agent would interview the person, decide what to do, and notify us whether to detain the person or to release them. It was up to the federal government. So that has always been going on. That wasn't new. But in June of 2006, there was a man and woman who were killed in a head-on collision out in Old Hickory here in Nashville. Upon booking this individual in the jail for the 14th time, he'd been arrested. When we booked him this time, we had sent his information to the federal government every time he'd been arrested. On the 14th arrest, they tell us that he had been across the border multiple times and he was an immigration violator. And so my concern was not, as the media liked to say back then, that the first day it was family killed in head-on collision by a drunk driver. The next day the headline said drunk driver was an illegal immigrant. And then the next day the headline said that illegal immigrant was in their jail for 13 times. Oh. And the fact is that the federal government, when we sent them their data all along, got to a point at somewhere along the way in the last several years where they weren't able to check everyone's status that was being sent. These are all people who are arrested for crimes in Nashville and brought to jail. They're not people who are just having their immigration status checked. You must be criminally charged with another offense, brought to jail, see a judge, and then the judge puts you in jail, and then we will check your status. That's what's often left out of the conversation, is that it's not people being pulled over to check your status. It's the crime that brings you to jail, let's say DUI or shoplifting. Or anything, and then when you go to the judge orders you to jail. Once you're in jail, just like we've always done, we fingerprint you, photograph you. Now, instead of having to send your stuff to the federal government, a program called 287G brings the data to the booking room.
Oh, okay.
So it's just a computer system, fingerprint system, and we're basically doing their job for them. Oh. The job that has always been done by the federal government. It isn't new. 287G really just represents where it's located in the federal law. It really isn't new, it isn't a fancy thing. And the people often get confused. This program was authorized by Congress in 1995, I mean many years ago. It basically said that the federal government may not have the resources to do all of the information checks that would need to be done. So local law enforcement agencies like the Sheriff's Office would be authorized to do it for them. So in '95, under the Clinton administration, it was approved. It's been around all through the Bush administration. We signed up late in the Bush administration as a result of what happened out here in Lakewood when we then understood that they're not doing what they were supposed to. Then we said, if they're not going to do it, we believe someone ought to be checking the status of arrestees. So we did that, and I think the more recent conversation about it is once President Obama was elected, he wanted to review the way the program, all programs by the way, it wasn't unique to 287G, everything, as I would too. I'd want to review what the programs that were in place. Upon the review of the program, they decided to revise it in certain ways and send it back out, and it was exactly the way we have always done it here. There are other places around the country that were doing it a little different than we were, but they have told me more than one time out of Washington we are the model that they want everyone else to follow. It's written exactly the way that we do it today, and so although some wanted it to be different, some wanted it to be a sensation or some dramatic change, absolutely nothing has changed about the way the program works. We're very proud of it. We've seen about a 57% reduction in people who are illegally in the country committing crimes in Nashville. That's what we were doing when we started. It wasn't targeting people for who they were. It was targeting people who were committing crimes and holding them accountable for that crime and also for being in our country illegally. So most people in the community, I've lived here all my life, most people in the community on both sides of the aisle believe that people should be held accountable if you do it in a fair way. This is fairly done because we're not out making arrests, as I said a minute ago. That's the police department doing that function. Once they've arrested you for a crime and bring you to jail, then we impose what is 287G then. And we think it's a growing program. President Obama has stated that it's going to grow across the country. He's rolled it out in 12 new jurisdictions just 2 months ago. So for those folks who thought it was not a good program, they're just choosing to read the wrong articles, because most people on both sides of the aisle believe it's the right thing to do.
Well, now, thank you for that explanation, because I myself and many others, you get confused. But you're right. One article says something, right? And I said, well, now, I'm going to get it from the horse's mouth today.
Well, it's been much written about, much talked about, I'll say that.
Well, good. That explains a lot, and that clears it up in my mind, too.
Okay.
and all. So very good. Now, I was just thinking, what are some of the future things now? You have success. From the federal government loves the way you've running the jail in terms of, and the 287G program, which is mainly the computer.
Right.
More just making it more convenient to be efficient in your job. And so, what are some of the things you plan to do in the next these 4 years?
You know, Lavinia, if I go back, I grew up in Antioch, Tennessee, and I've said this.
Native Nashvilleian.
I am native Nashvilleian.
Oh, good.
From Antioch.
From one native to the next.
There you go. There you go. Well, I've just always had a passion. The reason I'm really in this line of work is I believe that we should do something about it. And what I mean by it is, why do people commit crime? What is going on? And I have 2 young sons and living in this community. I hope they grow up and live here themselves or wherever they may go. But the truth is, we need to be addressing what the real problem is, and I don't mean we, the sheriff's office. It's a society issue, it's a community issue, and whether it's gangs, which are often talked about, whether it's the whole drug addiction issue, which I'm very interested in. That's probably the thing that I'm most fascinated with, and trying to get our hands around the problem. We know that about 85 to 90% of the people who come to jail are addicted to a substance. That's not an excuse for a person to make up. That's not something that they're trying to use to get out of their case. They're actually reporting the fact that they're addicted to substances. And so if we as society believe that 10 days in jail and then releasing them right back on the streets has done anything about their addiction, then that's wrong. We haven't done anything. So I think it's a systemic problem for us. The court system, the police departments, the custody people, the sheriff's office, let's say in Nashville, the Department of Corrections here, to get around the room, lock the door, and say, we have to come up with a better way. Sound bites, political, tougher sentences. I think tougher sentences make sense if you're going to do something during the phase of the tougher sentences. Longer sentences don't work. It keeps people out of the streets. But the fact is, if you don't address and arrest the problem, the person's easy to arrest. I tell all of my police department friends and all over the country that finding out who did it is not hard to do. It's dangerous, but it's not hard. Most people who commit crime aren't the smartest people during their addiction and their phase and their behavior. They're not very bright, if you will, during that phase of life. They're going to break in houses that they know. They're going to harm people they know. They're going to oftentimes leave simple evidence around. It's not complicated. It's dangerous, though. But what is hard and complicated to do something about is figuring out why they did it and what can we do about it. For a person who's breaking in a house, they're not really looking for what you would think. They're looking for something they can sell to get money to feed their addiction. And arresting that person is the easiest thing we're going to do. The most expensive thing we do is house them during a period of time. And society's got to figure out, what do you want us to do in our system, the judicial side, and in the custody side, so that when we put that person back out in the streets, they're less likely to break back in your house.
Well, now, once they are arrested, and if they are on drugs and they are arrested and they come to one of your prisons, what do you do in terms of with somebody who's hooked on drugs and there? What do you do?
Yeah, it's a very good question. There's two things really. What we focus on is trying to assess what your problems are. There could be many. A lot of times we used to think in this line of work years ago that it was a one-stop shop, that we could figure it out if you were addicted to drugs, that was your problem. Now the terminology is dually diagnosed, which really means there's dual things going on in multiple things, especially for women oftentimes. But whether it's the mental health problems, we see about 20 to 25% of the people coming into jail today are mentally ill. They're diagnosed mentally ill. That's not an excuse. They're diagnosed mentally ill. They're also oftentimes addicted to substances. So we've got to, and we have licensed treatment programs for people while they're in jail. I could walk you out there today and show you people who have been desperate, would tell you that the best things ever happened to them was getting to jail to get them clean and to get them aware of what the right decisions are and the responsible things to do. The problem, Lavinia, is when we open that door tonight and tomorrow and the next day and let that person go, I believe the person wants to do right a lot of times and is on the right track. But when the door opens up, if there's not someone there meeting them, and I mean that literally, the families have given up on them a lot of times. Society doesn't love the fact that a person has a conviction on their record to hire them at a job. There's all sorts of challenges when that door opens. And what's depressing for me is I believe, and I can show you, that we've had much success with dealing with a person, getting them off of, detoxing them off of drugs, getting them in a frame of mind to make the right decisions, and then we're opening the door, letting them go, only to see them go back into the streets with very little support system out there to make it. That's not an excuse either. To me, it's where I think we need to start the conversation. Whether it's the faith-based community, which I think has done some really good things in Nashville, trying to reach out for this population, or primarily the other issues, the job market today. We don't have to talk very long about it, but you know how difficult jobs are for people who have PhDs in this city. Imagine trying to have a conviction on your record of a felony and trying to get a job competing with that market. So there's all those challenges out there, but I think as long as we continue just to complain about the challenges and not do anything about it, we shouldn't be surprised at why people keep coming back in and out of the jail and prison system. So to me, the future for people in jobs like mine, judges and police chiefs and mayors, really sit down and let's just quit talking about it. What is it that we need to do? There are issues. There's a long story in our paper in the last couple of weeks about gangs. An expert on gangs was here this week and out of Los Angeles and said people who deny that they're here, deny the effects and negative effects that they're having, most systems have proven that to be the worst approach to take. And Nashville historically has taken a kind of a let's don't talk too much about gangs as a philosophy. I know years ago that was kind of a written guideline that we weren't going to mention gangs. It may support the fact that we have gangs. So I think that's one example. Whether it's the mentally ill, when you've got 1 in 5 people coming in jail who are mentally ill. It's an expensive way to treat the mentally ill. We deinstitutionalized them out of hospitals. Now they're just in jails and prisons.
Right. They've closed down most of the mentally ill facilities. The hospitals. And the state and state and local, and so they're in jail, and you're taking care of them.
Yeah, and Lavinia, it's out of sight, out of mind. People believe it's just a new institution. I mean, we run the largest mental health hospital in the city called the jail, and it's an expensive way to do it. A lot of these folks have really been arrested for what are trivial type offenses, urinating in the park or being loitering or doing things that they shouldn't do. But the fact is they're off their medication. They get arrested for their behavior. They're brought to jail. The family doesn't want them released. Society doesn't want them out there. And so we treat the mentally ill in a jail instead of a mental health institution. And I just think that's a conversation society needs to have, and we need to be on the forefront of explaining what it really costs to do it this way.
So when they come out, there's no what do you call wraparound services to support them when they get out.
Yeah, and I think Nashville has some resources other cities don't. I mean, we have a mental health court that helps here. We have some resources that other communities, but the truth is the state budgets are being cut. The majority of those cuts are coming through the mental health areas. We're seeing the beds drying up for those that need to be committed to mental health institutions. I'm talking about those who are dangerous to themselves, that's severely mentally ill. We're seeing that those beds dry up every day. I mean, the options we have are to leave them in jail while they're harming themselves, or take them to Chattanooga. Even
what's in Chattanooga?
There are a few beds in Chattanooga when these beds dry up at the mental health hospital. There are the hospital here handles only those who are admitted because they're severely mentally ill, going to harm themselves. They do not take people who are not admitted or committed by a doctor, and so we end up with the jail managing people who are mentally ill, need medication, need treatment, or some alternative to just a security environment, which is what jails are really designed to do. You have officers working for us who are part-time psychologists, part-time psychiatrists, part-time security officers, because they're having to deal with people who are not accountable for their actions. And so you have a lot of that going on. And I just think the future of city governments and state government is to have a real conversation. We have enough laws on the books. You can pass all the laws you want to in the state level or the local level. Why don't we deal with what the real problems are and for our community? And I think I like to say arresting the person is being done in large number. Arresting the problem is what we need to be focused on.
Well, my gosh, so this third term of your in office as sheriff is you have your hands full in trying to but that's a very noble cause and needed, my gosh.
Yeah, you know, it's really why I got into this, to be honest with you. I mean, I read the book Helter Skelter when I was 16 years old, and I wanted to know why. You know, that was the Charles Manson murders, and I wanted to know why it happened. And if we could figure out why, maybe we could do something, you know, and that sounds weird, but as a 16-year-old, I don't know that I could have put it into those terms, but I was really intrigued by the subject. I went away to college to study the subject. And yes, catching people who do wrong is intriguing. My wife watches CSI all the time and loves the show, but it is not that difficult to catch that problem. What's difficult is to do something about why people do it. And if we can identify the why in mentally ill or substance abuse addiction or many other homelessness, which is another pressing issue. We should be challenged to do something about that, and I hope to be a part of that, whether I'm in the office or I'm outside living here. But I enjoy the challenges of trying to change people's behavior and put them on the right track.
Now, see, that's why no one will ever run against you.
Oh, I don't know. Some people may not agree with
me. You are very good.
Well, thank you.
And thank you, Darren. We have enjoyed having you on Luvic and Co today. My gosh, it's just been so enlightening.
Well, thank you.
So many good programs. And thank you. We would like to have you back. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Thank you.
Okay, I wondered if we...